We called him a fraud. He went further than saying he didn't trust him.
All right, we're going to get a new Conservative MP coming in now.
I believed Nigel Farage.
We got banned from Nottinghamshire County Council by the Reform leader there.
That's a mark of success, I'd say.
Hi, Neil Patterson here, host of the Sky News Daily Podcast. Do hope this finds you well. Look, if you're wanting to understand the news just that bit better, this is the place for you. Every Friday, we take a closer look at someone who's been making the headlines. This time, someone seen as a potential future leader of the country, not least by himself, Robert Jenrick. After months of positioning, pointed criticism and barely concealed frustration within the Conservative Party, Robert Jenrick finally joined Reform UK. Well, actually, what happened is that his boss Kemi Badenoch was briefed that he was going to jump ship, so she rather unceremoniously pushed him overboard before he had the chance. In defecting, he becomes, bar Nigel Farage, Reform's most recognisable Westminster figure, giving the party a boost and the Conservatives yet another migraine. Mr Jenrick insists this is all about principle, that Britain is broken and it's everyone else's fault. So, depending on your view, it's either a bold ideological stand or simply the latest stop on his long meandering journey to find anyone who'll let him lead something. A book club, a parade, ideally a country, but clearly he's flexible. So today we're asking, just who is Robert Jenrick? What prompted the man who first became MP for Newark back in 2014 to turn his back on the Conservatives? And what does this latest reinvention tell us about the state of the political right in the United Kingdom? I sat down with our deputy political editor, Sam Coates.
Do you know what, Neil? The journey's best seen through the photographs of him.
Go on.
Because when you look at those photographs of the newly arrived in 2014, because he won in the Newark by-election in that year, he was a moderate MP, a one-nation Conservative.
Bit wet, wasn't it?
A little bit wet, a little bit tubbier, a little bit less healthy, and that's not weightist.
Let's neither of us talk.
No, it's been, you know, I understand it's been Christmas. The shirt is, you're having trouble with the buttons. What was clear is, you know, he was a certain character then. He progressed pretty quickly up the ladder, but he was a Remainer, and then we voted for Brexit, and then he was a Brexiteer, a hard Brexiteer by positioning. Then he wanted to leave the European Convention of Human Rights, and he was a very, very hardline immigration sceptic, having previously in his career been a lot more gentle on that.
And he had a bit of a conversion when he was at the Home Office, wasn't it?
That's the narrative. The sort of one version, his version, is the facts helped shape his approach. And another version is this guy will do whatever it takes to get to the top, right? Don't forget, he basically was sacked by Boris Johnson at one point. There were lots of stories about him and property moguls and developments and donations and all the rest of it, and he found himself out of the cabinet when he was after being housing secretary, and then found his way back in after that, after positioning himself further to the right and making him more of an important political figure that brought with him a caucus and a bunch of MPs behind him, and then embarked on sharpening his image. You know, quite a lot of cash looks like it had been pumped into how he did his videos that caught the attention, and he undoubtedly had a following, this news-felt, slimline, super healthy lad. There's an element of lad about Robert Jenrick. Some of his social media over the Christmas period had him alongside his friend Rick Holden at the darts, wearing those funny hats. You know, in his quest to represent a certain type of white English man. He was trying to appeal to that demographic, I think, and a sort of very different vibe from what we had in 2014 onwards as a sort of Premier Cameroon. All of that was designed to speak to the politics of the moment. So was it policy that radicalised him, or just power being within his grasp? I think a lot of people think it's a bit more the latter, including, by the way, Nigel Farage.
So would you describe him then as an effective political operator? I mean, if column inches and broadcast minutes are the barometer, then you might have to say yes. He likes the headlines.
Yeah, but I don't think headlines are how you answer your question. What determines an effective political operator? Proving that they've changed something. Well, look at his career. I mean, he managed to achieve the top of Tory politics 2 or 3 times, despite setbacks, despite being on the wrong side of the Brexit debate, despite leaving the cabinet. He was back. He was a leadership contender who lost and then was in contention again only last year, the polling suggests. He was millimetres from taking over from Kemi Badenoch at points, I would suggest. So that is a success. Another success is he helped take the Conservative Party with him. Of course, the difference between Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch in the leadership contest was he backed leaving the ECHO and she didn't make that firm commitment. Where did the Tory party end up 6 months later? In his position and not hers, even though he won. And he can sniff the wind. So what?
Yeah, so that was what I was going to say. So is it just that he got the politics before everyone else did? I mean, the social media videos that he does, he says things that we know there are plenty of people within the Conservative Party, not necessarily on the front bench, that they are thinking, but they daren't say it. I mean, he was saying some pretty out there stuff at times, isn't he?
Yeah, he was. I think he's defined, some of his career is defined by bravery, right? He was happy to, put two fingers up to the group of the Tory party that he entered kind of alongside those One Nationers. He resigned as immigration minister when Rishi Sunak was prime minister over allegations that Rishi wouldn't go far enough in order to achieve the ends of stopping the boats and all the rest of it. He has done bold things with his career in order to change things and been successful in it. So yes, it's more than headlines. I think he has dragged the Tory policy position. He has achieved feats of political rehabilitation that few can. That's a mark of success, I'd say.
Ideologically, is he more reform than Conservative?
I don't know. So one of the things going on behind the scenes is, and what we've seen since the election, is Kemi Badenoch has adopted a position that the Conservative Party will not cooperate with reform. But at the same time, the policy positions of those two parties are getting ever closer together. I mean, we talked about the European Convention on Human Rights. There's quite a lot of stuff around green environmental regulations, other things to do with the relationship with Europe and whether or not you would rewrite some of the treaties that Labour are doing. All of that stuff. Behind the scenes, the sort of, the question of what's the clear blue water between the Tories and reform kind of, policy-wise is less clear. Tories would like it to be the idea that reform aren't economically and fiscally conservative and economically competent. Reform will go out and out to challenge that and close the gap there. And it'd be interesting to see where figures like Robert Jenrick take that. I mean, if, for instance, Robert Jenrick was the Treasury spokesman for Reform UK in a hypothetical future verse, could that help deal with all of that? And is that then, are we not really on very similar territory where the name and the front man is the difference rather than, and because even the donors, frankly, in some cases are the same.
So what then do we know of his relationship with Nigel Farage? Quite clearly, there has been a courtship going on, and perhaps for some time.
I've talked to Nigel Farage about Robert Jenrick, and sort of with some conviction, what Nigel said to me on this subject when I interviewed on it in about April of last year was, look, I know Robert. I'm not sure I trust him. And the reason that I'm not sure I trust him is he flips his political position for political convenience.
He called him a fraud. He went further than saying he didn't trust him, called him an absolute fraud.
Yeah, and, anybody who flip-flops that much, you've got to be careful of. I said to Nigel Farage, do you think that Robert Jenrick's the kind of person that gives politics a bad name? And Farage was like, well, I think it's for him to prove that that's not the case. So, but I believed Nigel Farage. He was quite convincing in the caution with which he spoke about Robert Jenrick. And he did identify something I think that a lot of people identify about the journey and clearly did see it as something to be cynical of. There are other views in Reform UK. Richard Tice has always been much warmer, much more openly saying, look, Robert Jenrick, you should come over. And I was always struck by the difference between those two. Nigel Farage and Richard Tice are different, though. I think Richard Tice, who has sort of conservative vibes about him, would be intrinsically and essentially a lot more comfortable with that defection.
Let's turn now to Natalie Fahy. She's the editor of Nottinghamshire Live, which has been covering the constituency, the Newark constituency, which Mr Jenrick has held since 2014. I began by asking her what she's made of his political career to date.
I think Robert Jenrick's been on a bit of a journey. He's been MP in Newark for 10 years, and when he first arrived, he was parachuted in, safe seat, he's not from the area, everyone was a bit like, who is this guy? And the journey he's been on, you know, he's very ambitious, almost ruthlessly so, and he's obviously building his own personal brand, and we've seen him kind of step away from the party slightly and become like a person who does these really energetic social media campaigns, like the thing about fare evaders on the London Underground. Absolutely nothing to do with Newark, but gets him a lot of personal attention. And he went for the leadership, obviously he lost that. He knows he's popular in his area because until the last election at least he had a huge majority. So, you know, we've seen a big change in the way he behaves, and it's all about his personal brand, I think.
Take me then a few steps along the early stages of that journey. As you say, parachuted into Newark. I mean, how was he perceived at the time and in the first few years of his time as Member of Parliament?
Well, I mean, we used to have a little bit of a nickname for him where we called him Robert Jenrick because he was just sort of parachuted in as a safe seat Conservative MP, and he was just sort of bobbing along. He's never been this great constituency MP because he's not from the area. I think people generally like him, but there's always been a little bit of a distance where people kind of think, okay, you've just been sent in, but you're not actually from our area, you're not one of us. I mean, you will hear lots of stories about people who he's helped and he's done stuff for them, but generally, he's always been this kind of climber. So he had a few years where he didn't really do very much, and then you sort of saw him accelerate, and he lost all the weight, he overhauled his physical, personal, outward appearance. He started doing all these personal campaigns to get himself noticed. And that's when you started thinking, okay, this is really a guy who wants to get out there and get known.
Give me an idea then of how he was as a campaigner, because, you know, safe Conservative seat, yeah, but we live in troubled times, and frankly, I'm not sure that there are many safe Conservative seats these days.
He is one of those people who you will always see out on the streets taking photos of himself on Twitter. And he made a massive deal, or X as we now call it, he made a massissive deal of the fact that he went out with a load of guys with a ladder and put up Union Jack flags. And there were videos, photos of that. We had Robert Jenrick in his jeans and t-shirt putting up flags on the street, which sits a little bit at odds with the person who I think he really is. He comes from a really wealthy background. He's got lots of properties around the country. He's not your normal guy. He's not like Lee Anderson, who's been down the pit and had that kind of authentic working class hero journey. He's not that kind of person, but he's tried to reshape himself a little bit as that. That's the kind of guy he's trying to become, I think. But is it working? I don't know.
I mean, over the course of the 11 plus years that he has been the local MP, I mean, have you noticed, as others have, the drift to the right in his personal politics?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think because he's got this huge personal ambition, he's obviously thought, I need to get in with reform. And so he's just aligned himself more with that. I mean, I wouldn't say people in Newark are particularly massively concerned about illegal migration and all those kind of traditional reform things that people are really going for at the moment. It's more of an old school Conservative area. So it's interesting that he's done this.
In terms, though, of his obvious personal ambition, is that necessarily in and of itself a bad thing? I'm just wondering, when he was holding those senior posts within government, whether there wasn't just a certain amount of pride that the local MP had risen to such high office.
I think that actually made his position as MP less tenable, if anything, because he was moving even further away from the constituents. You know, he was this ruthlessly ambitious person who was trying to climb to the top of government at the expense of what was happening in his local area. So yes, you may see him putting flags up in the middle of the road, but is he actually helping anybody? Newark is quite a small town, it's quite a proud town. I think they really want someone who is embedded in their community to be their local MP. And he kind of created this bit of a distance between the constituents and his kind of presence on the national stage. I mean, we saw this as local journalists as well, you know. All the time, he'd be writing columns for the Daily Telegraph, giving exclusives to the Daily Telegraph, but it was really, really hard for us to get him on the phone. You know, I'm not saying he's a bad guy, but it screams someone who's looking in the national stage direction rather than what actually matters on the local platform and to the local constituents.
Let's talk then just a little bit more about how this defection is being perceived in Newark itself. I mean, you've mentioned the constituents there. Are people up in arms? Are they grabbing the pitchforks and the torches?
I think people are confused. So, you know, like the likes of you and me, we're a little bit in the political bubble, probably you more than me. We know what this means, and they've got a Reform MP now. But I don't think people understand that. I think they either think there's going to be another election and they'll get a chance to vote, or some people on local Facebook groups have been saying, all right, we're going to get a new Conservative MP coming in now because we voted for the Conservatives. So they're just a bit confused about what's actually happening. We might see further down the line that people will come to realisation that, oh, hey, we've got a Reform MP now. But it might take a few weeks for people to kind of go, oh, actually, I voted for the Conservatives. I want a by-election now. But as we've seen from other defections, that's not going to happen, is it?
What practically do you think that the fact you now have a Reform MP rather than a Conservative MP will have on the constituency?
What it means for the wider Nottinghamshire picture is we're kind of at the epicentre of this big Reform surge. We've got a massive power base now of big Reform names. Obviously Newark is right on the border of Nottinghamshire and Lincolnshire. We've got Lee Anderson, we've got Ben Bradley, who lives in Newark. So his MP is Robert Jenrick now, which I'm sure he's absolutely ecstatic about. We've got Andrea Jenkins, we've got Richard Tice just down the road. So we're really at the centre of this now, but what does it mean? What does it mean for Newark? I mean, it is put it on the national stage. They probably don't really care about that in Newark itself. I think it's going to take them a bit of time to finally think, oh, right, this has happened, what we're going to do now.
What does it mean for you and your colleagues? Because as I understand it, you haven't always had the greatest of relationships with Reform.
We were in the news last year because obviously we got banned from Nottinghamshire County Council by the Reform leader there. But it's a really mixed bag. I think it's very personality driven, and I think that particular instance was personality driven by that particular leader. We've always had an okay relationship with Robert Jenrick when he's been here, of course. But Lee Anderson blows really hot and cold, depending on what his mood is at the time. Ben Bradley, we've got a great relationship with. We've got on well with Richard Tice in the past. I think, I don't think that much is really going to change, hopefully, unless this kind of accelerates Robert Jenrick's ambition to, go even further forward, and he's got even less time for the local things going on, which is a possibility.
What's your best guess about that? Now that he has moved to the smaller party, after, of course, failing to gain the leadership of the Conservative Party, I mean, do you think, given what you've seen, locally, that his ambition lies in that direction within the party?
Yeah, well, he's going to be a big fish in a small, inexperienced pond. And he's a great political operator. He's a really confident public speaker. He's an intelligent guy. He's got lots of experience. I think anyone who's got ambition in Reform at the moment should probably be a bit worried about Jenrick joining, because he's going to try and shoot straight to the top and nothing will stand in his way. Of course, he's got to keep his seats. That's the main thing. So he will have to occasionally come back and maybe put some more flags up. But, he's ruthless. So I don't know if even the likes of Farage will be sort of thinking, okay, I've got to watch out for this guy.
My thanks to Natalie, to Sam, and of course to you for watching. If you want to hear more from the Sky News Daily podcast team, just click the playlist over on the right. If you want to see more from Sky News, just click the channel button right in the middle.